Welcome to the Astrology Star Sisters Talk Over Tea. Today we're talking about the Sagittarius Decans using astrology and tarot. And my astrology star sister and friend Joy Vernon is joining me today. Welcome, Joy. How are you?
I'm good, Liz. How are you doing? Probably
Good.
feeling better now that the power is back.
Yes. And we're expecting another windstorm, but we'll get through that one too, one day
All
at a
right, all
time.
right. Exactly, exactly.
So, to get a hold of Joy Vernon, her website is joyvernon.com. And my website is alightpath.com. And we always enjoy hearing from you. And we're talking about the Sagittarius Decans. And you want to talk about Sagittarius, please?
Sure, absolutely. I think primarily, I think when I think of Sagittarius, I think of that archer. And so most of the time I actually think of Robin Hood. And when Robin Hood in the Errol Flynn version of that movie, when they had that contest with the shooting the arrows, and you know, Robin Hood kept winning every round, and then finally there was, I think somebody else hit the dead center, and Robin Hood told them to move the target back further. And they moved it back, and he's further, and they moved it back, and then he shot this arrow just like so far and so straight, and it broke that other arrow in two, just pierced right through it to hit the very, very center of the target. And that's what I think of with Sagittarius, and it's the way they think, the way they talk, the way they plan is all they see that target at the far end of things, and their mind is constantly shooting those arrows at that far target. And so Sagittarius is usually way ahead of everybody else. It's hard to keep up with them. They see further when they plan than a lot of the other signs. So that's really what I think about mostly with Sagittarius. Um, I do think that the mutable quality of it brings in a lot of that exploratory energy, really wanting to learn new things, try new things. Maybe push the edge a little bit, like Robin Hood is like, I can shoot further, move it back. It's like trying to push the boundary a little bit. And that mutable energy gives it a lot of that adaptability, that sense of evolving, distributing. It can uh I think of the distributing, when I think of mutable and distributing, I think of how the axles in a car distribute energy from a central source into from the engine into the wheels. There's this also probably a sense of delegating, but that's what I think of when I think of distributing. And Jupiter ruling it, Jupiter is large and benevolent and generous and wise and all of those things, and that adds a lot of its philosophy into Sagittarius. Um, as a fire sign, it's got that enthusiasm, excitement, energetic. It has a lot of vitality to it. Um, and so then in the mantras is to seek, to explore, um, to try to learn more. Keywords: philosophical, adventurous, that high-minded, far-seeing, and just there is like an elevated quality. Again, that view of that arrow up in the air, but also spontaneous. They don't they're there is a they're so far seeing with their plans that again there can be a spontaneous, not not more of a Gemini spontaneous, which is just like, oh, I had a thought, let's go do this. The Sagittarian spontaneity, I think it is they just jumped 3 or 4 steps ahead, and it seems spontaneous, but to them it's still part of the plan because they're seeing so far ahead. Um, and the cautions are more along that arrogant. They're confident, and confident can break down into arrogance if they get short-tempered, which they also can be, regarding other people not keeping up with them. And same thing with unreliable, just because that thinking so far ahead, uh, on to the next step, it sometimes makes current steps seem irrelevant to them. And so they might suddenly change their plans or not, or something like that. Inconsistent, I was really torn between inconsistent and inconstant, which are pretty similar. But I was trying to go for this idea of, um, when you're always thinking so far ahead, there the immediacy of the plan, the next step part is not nearly so relevant as the end result. and so and so they can seem very inconsistent as they swerve or jump or take big leaps in order to arrive at their destination. Those are just some of my thoughts on it. What are some of the things that you usually think of with Sagittarius?
Well, I always think of that, if you have an idea and you're having a hard time moving it forward, the Sagittarius energy is very helpful in that because they can see a little farther maybe than if you can just see the right now. And so it can help, like that distance vision and 3 steps ahead can be very useful, but there has to be some kind of balance with that. The cardinal energy initiates and gets things going, and then the fixed energy does the work to get it to the further steps, and then that Sagittarius can even take it further. So, or the mutable energy. So I really like how you said all that. And Sagittarius is also associated with foreign travel, long distance travel, foreign lands, and always seeking, because it's like higher education or continuing to learn. I think of a lot of continuation of learning. It's like, I want more information, I want more information, I want more information. So,
I love that. Yes, that's exactly it.
so today we're talking about the Decans. They originated in Egypt and are aligned with the fixed stars, and they're divided into 3 equal portions for each astrological sign. And there's 12 astrological signs that are 30 degrees each. So Decan 1 is 0 to 9 degrees and 59 minutes. The second Decan is 10 degrees and 19 degrees to 59 minutes, and 20 degrees to 29 and 59 minutes. So we're going to start with the major arcana card for Sagittarius, and that's Temperance. And Joy picked a lovely tarot deck that I'd never even seen before, and this is a very pretty deck, and I believe you said it's a newer deck. Oh, yes, you have the date on there, 2023. So what would you like
Yeah,
to say about Temperance?
yeah, that came out in the spring last year, and I've gotta say it quickly rose into the position of one of my favorite decks. I love reading with this deck. It's Tarot of the Witch's Garden by Sasha Graham and Natasha Alinsik. Um, and Temperance has that I'm there's so much to say. I mean, these major arcana in particular are so broad in their implications. And temperance, to just start with the word, it is to temper something, which can, if you temper steel, you make it stronger. But also you can, um, it can also have this meaning of making something weaker by dilution, uh, going along with the idea of tempering, temperance or not drinking or something like that. So they're kind of some varied, almost opposite types of qualities with that. But also it's about blending, and we usually see that with the cup pouring from one to another. And so there's this idea of blending, and that's the idea of temper, which is the four humors in medical philosophy. Um, and so I think that's the meaning that most people usually work with, is the idea of blending. Um, the some of the older illustrations, like Tarot de Marseille illustrations, um, although I don't know that it's 100% universal across all of those illustrations, but it's always interesting to count. In the older illustrations, the stream of water is usually illustrated by like little channels, and it's really interesting in some of them because there are four channels leaving the top cup as it pours down into the bottom cup, and typically only three channels entering the bottom cup. And so that, I think, has a lot to do with the spiritual implication of the card, because there is something there that is starting at the spiritual level but doesn't enter the physical level. It doesn't enter the lower level physically. It only enters the lower level as an idea. And so there's a little bit of this quality of the of a spiritual presence, and that spiritual essence is a lot of the Jupiter, which rules Sagittarius, in addition to being a counselor or a nobleman or an advisor, also can be a priest. And so that is that extra energy, that extra channel that comes through from that upper cup that we don't necessarily directly perceive in the world around us, but it is there on an energetic level. And there's more and more. The irises there are the iris is the goddess of the rainbow, and some decks actually show a rainbow. The idea of touching one foot on land and one foot in the water is very interesting, although here you can't see the back foot. And so that's kind of an interesting take. It's like she's supported just by her toe in that water. And so again, there's a lot of, I think of elevation when I think of this card, and the path on the tree of life goes from the ninth sephira towards the bottom, up to the sixth sephira. And so there's a strong sense of elevation, and that elevates to basically out of the personality level and into the higher self, or into the ethical level, they refer to it sometimes. So we can see her kind of floating or hovering over this pool of water. And I think this idea of elevating is and rising up is a big process, a big symbol that we see in this card. And you can see how a lot of that ties back into Sagittarius, that there is, and the card, the Rider-Waite Smith card, has the angel in the front, and all the way back where the sunrise is in the far back, there's that crown that the sun is shaped like a crown that has light coming from it. And that crown, of course, is representative of Cater, which means crown on the tree of life. So we've got Yesod and then Teferet and then Cater at the very top. And so this idea, that far-seeing, long-reaching arrow of Sagittarius really comes through very strongly in this card as it elevates us all the way up to the highest spiritual levels.
Oh, that's well said, and it's beautiful. And yeah, her toe in the water and assuming her other foot's on the land. I think of, there's a big older tree there with rocks around it and the earth. So to me, that's being rooted in the now or the mundane. And then, like you said, the water and the cups is spiritual and intuition, I think of. And so it's like this, bringing balance to everything. And even though there's not a rainbow, the sky is several different colors. So it kind of has the rainbowy colors, but it's not an actual rainbow. So I like that.
One of the things oh, sorry, I think you might find this interesting. One of the things that's really curious about that card is that it's right after the Devil and right before the Tower, which are considered two of the most challenging cards, or right after, right after Death and right before the Devil. And Death is is the end, or a finality to something, and there is a spiritual um philosophy or metaphor of the soul passing from one body into another, like like water being poured from one cup into another. And so death being followed by temperance, which is the passing of the soul from one vessel into another vessel. And then from 14 we go to 15, the devil, which would be the reincarnation back into the world of challenge and suffering and difficulty. So kind of a nice little sequence there.
Well, and it's almost like, a new beginning or a reawakening. I think of the phoenix rising, from the ashes of death, and then the phoenix rises to begin anew. It's like a new day. It's like if we slept the night before, that day is gone, and now we start afresh with a new day. So I like
Yes,
that.
nice, nice.
Okay, so we have the first decan in Sagittarius is the Eight of Wands, the Lord of Swiftness. And what would you like to say about this?
Well, again, we've got such gorgeous artwork here, and I love how these wands, these flaming brands, are spiraling above her. Whether I believe that she has released them outward, but they could be spiraling down to her. But the idea of the spiral can be a symbol of evolution, and I think that Sagittarius has that mutable idea definitely evolves things, and I think you mentioned that earlier. um and so I think that this spiral does bring new life, and life on different layers, like evolving of things. And I think that that's a really relevant for the Sagittarian association for this. It's called the Lord of Swiftness, and a lot of that just by itself makes a real decent interpretation for the card. A lot of times things are moving quickly when we see the Eight of Wands. But it's Mercury ruling the first decan of Sag, and since Mercury rules the sign of Gemini, it is in its detriment in Sagittarius, but it does have rulership of that first decan. Um, and so Mercury in Sagittarius, as a general rule, is has got too much. It's too many thoughts and too many ideas and too many things to explore and too many things to learn and too many places to go. And so it can be a little chaotic. And I think we get a little bit of that more than the Rider-Waite-Smith, where those 8 wands are just kind of coming through in a real even, elegant kind of flight path, kind of coming in for a landing. This creates a little bit more of that slight chaos that we might get with Mercury and Sagittarius. Um, I think one of the main things is that the um the card can represent that really smooth, fast arrow through the air to that target, smooth ride of Mercury and going the distance. But I think as you look through a variety of decks, you'll start to see um, illustrations that weave in a little bit of that Sagittarian detriment, with uh, confusion, or that sense of too much going on. Um, so yeah, I think those are probably, I could probably talk talk forever. So I'm like, I need to recognize places to stop. So I'm going to stop.
Well, that card reminds me of people doing dances with fire, which I thought was cool.
Mm.
And, you know, with Mercury in Sagittarius, I would say that they're quick on their feet. They can make quick decisions, but the opposite side of that would be that thoughts and ideas are coming so fast that it's hard to keep up with it all. So, you know, it has there's usefulness, but, you know, and maybe if the ideas are coming quick and fast, take notes and write it down.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So then we have the astrology chart for November 21st at 11:57 with Mercury at 21 degrees Sagittarius circled there in pink. So we want to see, you know, what's Mercury doing in the sky over this 10-week period. Um, so do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think one of the kind of interesting things that we have is that, last early, I don't remember when it was, earlier this month or at the end of last month, we had Mercury move into Sagittarius, and it still went fairly quickly through, but of course we've got the retrograde coming up on November 25th. And so it's only been a few weeks in Sag, but it is already slowed down to the it stations at 22, and so it's not quite at that station degree. And then it's going to go from the third decan all the way back to the first decan, in its retrograde, and then move forward again. And so here at 21 degrees, it is opposite to Jupiter, which is retrograde there in mid um, Gemini, and we also have the grand trine, the grand fire trine, over to Chiron in Aries, and to the moon at this time, the date of this chart. Is that today? I don't like, what day is
Yes.
today? Is that today
Yes,
or
it's the
tomorrow?
same day. Today.
I'm having trouble with dates lately. And so the moon over in Leo. And so yeah, so we've got that really nice, and we already talked about all of these, the exploratory and the excitement and the vitality and the um adventure that we all think of with Sagittarius, and then to put our ruling planet of our decan and then put it into this grand fire trine. It's like, this is, huge amount of fire energy, literally spiral, because that to me is a grand I always, somebody Somebody once described a grand water trine to me as a water wheel, and I often think of those grand trines because they are supportive to each other and they move easily. And so I do think of those, I think of those grand trines as moving. And so just this, um, that spiral that we saw in the Eight of Wands, I think is what this energy is like here. That Mercury, which is communication and thoughts and learning, and all of your speaking and writing and things like that. Chiron, which is the wounded healer, and activates points that need healing and give you an opportunity to heal. And then the moon, which is our inner self, our subconscious, our dreams, it's our emotions, over there in Leo, which is, which is the sun sign, not Cancer where it rules, but the sun sign, and moon in Leo tries to be like the sun, which it isn't always 100% successful at, but it's a huge amount of confidence. It's feeling like you can really show off the emotions. Uh, and I mean, that's just a lot of healing, emotional, communicative energy in there. And so it's really nice. But then the opposition to Jupiter and Gemini, I always think of the opposite planet, to the peak of the triangle. Um, I think that one tends to create a pivot point or a place of stability, and so Jupiter and Gemini is giving us our pivot point or our stable point. And Gemini, of course, these are in mutual reception, whereas Mercury rules Gemini, but Jupiter rules Sagittarius, and so they're in each other's signs. And and so they're really that's a really supportive position. Jupiter also, and this is true of the Jupiter Mercury ruled signs, that they uh you know they're well, I don't sorry.
That's all right.
Sometimes I get myself going down a track and I'm like, how far is that track gonna go? Maybe I should just pull it back. But at any rate, uh, so so Jupiter in Gemini is in Mercury sign, helping Mercury out and giving him assistance, saying, the best metaphor is Mercury is in Jupiter's house, and Jupiter is like, "Oh yeah, anything you need, it's there for you. I've really stocked everything. You've got, if you need any help with anything, just give me a quick call. I'm right here for you. I will make sure you've got all that you need." It's that kind of thing, and so they're really supporting each other, I think, is the main thing. And because we've got Mercury, which is communication, and Sagittarius, which is education, we do get a huge amount of ideas coming through, and exploration of ideas and learning and consumption of content and things like that going on.
Well, and I would suggest, um, either writing down in a little notebook or have a recording device on your phone that some of the ideas and information that's coming forward, that you make note of it, because it might be very useful, down the road. And when Mercury is retrograde, it's a great time to do research, maybe to launch a new project.
Absolutely. Yeah, really, really good suggestion. And just the fact that Mercury is covering so much distance in the retrograde, um, really reiterates exactly what you said. It's going to go all the way back to the first decan, and go through that whole sign again, basically. And so it's really covering territory. It's a great idea to do exactly what you suggested.
Well, and two, with Jupiter will stay opposite Mercury most of the time within range, pretty close. And, Mercury is what I call basic education or adding, continuing hours. And Jupiter, Sagittarius is about higher education. So people might be reviewing, going, okay, do I need to upgrade my skill level or can do some continuing education? Or maybe they are just a few credits away from a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. And it's like, now it's time to work on those things. Okay, then we go into the Sagittarius Decan number 2, which is the Nine of Wands, Lord of great strength, and the moon is the ruling planet. And what would you like to say about
Yes.
this?
Yeah. And so I always love this card. And there's a lot of different interpretations of it. And the way I primarily see this card is the there's the 8 wands in the background, and the person holds 1 wand almost always in illustrations for this card. And I think of the wands in the background as setting a boundary. And so a lot of times I go to boundaries as a keyword for this. Now, our character in this particular illustration is down with fingertips on the earth and one knee bent, and it looks to me like they're about to launch into a race. And so, which really works with that Sagittarian energy. And they could maybe not, maybe they're hiding or crouching, trying not to be seen. But, I would extinguish my torch and go hide in those trees if I didn't want to be seen. So I feel like more that they're trying to get ready to make a run for it or something like that. Um, the moon in Sagittarius, one of my favorite ways of looking at this card is that the moon is symbolic of the inner part of the self, but it's also symbolic of the mother or even of the home. And we see that with Cancer being the fourth house in the natural order of the zodiac. And so if we think of the moon as home and Sagittarius as being foreign travel, then we've got the idea of finding a home in foreign places. And in the past, when I've written about this card, I actually compared it to the the um, the soldiers that were occupying Troy in the Trojan War, and the Greek soldiers that were outside the gates of Troy, and occupied that land for like 10 years or something. I forget. It was a really long time. And just setting up camps, but for 10 years, and waiting for their chance to invade and take over this city that they wanted. um and and there's the whole story of Helen, and all of that kind of plays into it, and could you could think of her as the moon even. I'm not sure where you would go with that, but you might be able to do something interesting with that. And so the idea of making your home on a foreign land or being in a space temporarily, I think, is a lot of what this is about. And the Rider-Waite Smith image has the guy holding two hands onto the one wand. He's got the other wands behind him, kind of protecting him, and his head is bandaged. And so it seems he really has a determined look on his face. And it's kind of like, I'm not where I want to be. I didn't reach my goal, and I'm not home, but I'm not going to give up. I've drawn a line in the sand. A lot of people use that metaphor for this card, to draw a line in the sand and to hold your space, and to hold the advancements that you've got, even if it doesn't seem like you can advance any further. And so I think you can add all of those different ideas in together to really understand this you kind of ever changing moon there in this normally direct and active sign of Sagittarius.
And I like how the wands are all lit. Yeah, it doesn't seem like that this person is hiding it all. It's like, I'm gonna stay here. Maybe I haven't made it to the finish line, but I'm gonna stay here and I'm, prepared to hold where I am. And then when I can, I'll move forward.
Yeah.
Okay, and then here we have the chart for December 8th with a moon and a T-square. Go ahead and talk about this, please.
So, yeah, we've got the moon conjunct Saturn there in Pisces. And it is in that, it is square to the Sun and Mercury, which are conjoined there in the middle decan or second decan of Sagittarius, which is actually the one we're talking about, the moon ruled one. Um, and and they're still opposite to Jupiter in Gemini. And so, and of course, the moon and Saturn are square to Jupiter as well. And so that is our T-square. And, and um, we get some, I guess some of the, yeah, some of the things that I'm seeing with this is, first of all, there's kind of a lot of things going through my mind. I, I tend to be very influenced by the planets, and so with Mercury and Sagittarius, it's like we. And so I think one of the things that we're looking at here is this T square is holding for quite some time, partly due to the retrograde of Mercury. It's going to go all the way back and then come back into the this is the it's retrograde now at the date of this chart, and so it's already gone through forward through the second decan and into the third. It's now retrograding back into the second decan. It'll go to the first and then come forward again at the end of December, um, and uh, and hit that point again. I think it forms a T square again precisely. I think the exact time is actually on Christmas Eve. So we actually have this energy going on, or it might be, it might have been New Year's Eve, but at any rate, it goes through the end of December. And so we really have this T square kind of holding for a long time. And T squares have kind of a a, a grinding energy, whereas our grand trine was so free and moving. That T square kind of is grinding and holding in place. It forms blocks or prevents moving forward. And so I think that takes our, it's interesting. I guess I I don't wanna, I feel like I'm about to devolve into kind of like this is a difficult placement, and Saturn is limiting things and all of this stuff, but I think what we can really look forward to with this is after that grand trine during the first decan of Sagittarius, and all of that flighty free movement, I think here's where things get serious. And here might be where you'll hit a block with whatever you're trying to do, or wherever this is hitting your chart, that topic. It'll create a a difficulty or a challenge. But I think that that is something that also will help give some direction to the expansive energies that you might be experiencing. And so when you've got that kind of grinding Saturn is just saying, okay, stop, think about this for a minute. What was your goal? What do you want? Are you on your route? It's your um your coach coming in and holding you back and slowing you down and saying, let's make sure everything's lined up right so that we can move forward to the next step. So I think, and I really like the fact, and this chart is for that actual moon conjunct Saturn, uh, um, and I think that the moon in there, and it showed up in our first chart in rules, that this Decan, I think that it's really bringing our emotions in and giving us an emotional check as well.
Well, and to get more in touch with your emotions, because that moon in Pisces could be stuck in the fog. And it's almost like, to me, Saturn is offering a lifeline. It's like, okay, let's evaluate this. Like you said, having a counselor. And the T square to me is always, to me, about making adjustments. And sometimes they're not real big. Sometimes they could be bigger, but it doesn't have to be a huge adjustment, but just kind of a reevaluation. And that Mercury is under the beams of the sun, so it's combust. So sometimes, pulling back in check, the Saturn would be square to the Mercury of, do I really want to communicate something? Because maybe I'm doing it in anger, and maybe I could write it differently, and then it won't come back and bite me, so to speak.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay, and then we
You could
move on
say
to,
that chart tempers the Sagittarian energy.
I like that. That's perfect. So we're going to move into the third decan of Sagittarius, the 10 of Wands, Lord of Oppression, and the ruling planet of that is Saturn. And this card is lovely also. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. The Ten of Wands always, the title is Lord of Oppression, and it usually is about carrying a burden or feeling oppressed by something. Um, Frequently we see the person that's carrying the burden moving towards a town, and they seem like they're closing in on their destination, and so there is a slight sense of relief. And it's the 10th card of the sequence, and so it's closing out the numbered order. And one of the things that I find really fascinating about this is that we do see that sense of a boundary with the arched doorway, but it's not clear at all if she is entering into a town or leaving a town behind her. We see a house, which we assume is hers, but we don't see anything else. Is she arriving somewhere, or is she leaving, which is, I believe, is what she would be doing. Um, but it's not clear, and so I think that's really nice. She's got a baby, and so obviously she's um, uh, worried about caring for and protecting that. Um, and the fox there is a bit of a guide, and foxes are known for their cunning and their smarts, and so that and even the fox's fur is kind of the same color as her hair, so she identifies with that fox. And so we see a lot of that here. I love that Saturn does represent boundaries, and that she is crossing a boundary. And like I said, there's very few clues as to what that boundary is. And so Saturn ruling that third decan of Sagittarius is about finding those boundaries in that um, far-reaching expansiveness of Sagittarius. And I think that Saturn brings precision to what could be a flightiness in Sagittarius. That precision is what lets Robin Hood hit that arrow in the center of the target. Without that Saturn level of control, he could send arrows everywhere. But with Saturn level of control, that's when he can really hit the target. And so I think this is a pretty nice placement. Um, I think it brings a little bit of focus and uh, real seriousness and gravitas to this part of the sign. And I can feel that in her demeanor in this illustration. I can feel the gravitas of, am I going to do this? Am I going to leave? My house is still there, the lights on, and the chimney. There is a fire in the fireplace. I could be warm and cozy if I wanted to, or I could do this thing that is more important to me. That is a heavy burden to take, and there is a determination and a seriousness about her intent to accomplish it. And I think that really embodies that Saturn in in Sagittarius energy.
I like that. And, it's like, yes, she's carrying a heavy burden, but maybe there's 10 homes that need that fire to light their fireplace, and each home needs their own fire stick. And so maybe it was a task or a test, and she's almost there to complete it. But, it's like, don't give up when you're almost there.
I love it. I love it. What a great story to find in that card. That's perfect.
Okay, so we're going to look at the astrology chart for December 11th with Saturn, and Saturn's in a T square with Jupiter and the sun here. Go ahead.
Yeah, and this is basically the same one that we were looking at. Like I said, between one planet and another, this time it's got the sun as the primary. The sun and Mercury together were in the one we looked at last time. Um, this is just the sun. Mercury's moved too far back. But it's this energy that's kind of continuing and grinding away throughout a lot of this month and all of next month. And I think the idea of of Saturn dampening that Sagittarian energy, giving it grounding it, and of course Saturn is in Pisces, which it is not very grounded for Saturn's preference, but I still think it brings that kind of focus and uh, grounding energy into this equation here. Um, I'm not sure if I guess I'm trying to think what's useful to say that we didn't cover before. I think the sun, so we had the moon here with Saturn last time. The moon's moved on. Um, is the moon trine apparently this chart doesn't think the moon is trine to the sun. It must be out of orb, but it's basically trine to the sun. And so I think that the emotions that we saw touching base with the seriousness of Saturn, I think now they're in this fresh start position of Aries, and helping and sending that helpful, Jupiter ruled trine energy over to the sun. They're just entering the third decan of Sag, and probably giving us a little bit of, now that I've got that groundedness, now that I made my connection with the groundedness of Saturn, and made some adjustments, and now I feel really free to move forward with a little bit more stability than I had before. Um, and Mercury retrograde might make us take yet another look at it later. But I think with the sun there, I think that there is I don't know, there's a the sun and Jupiter both have a steadiness to them, I think is what I want to say. Whereas Mercury had more of that nervous flightiness, I think the sun and Jupiter have more steadiness and one step at a time. And so I feel like now we're a little bit more, we've got our checklist in place, whereas before we're like, hey, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, and it's like, no, Saturn came in, it gave us our reprimands, and now we've got a much more steady checklist, and we can move through this in a more confident and a little more stable manner.
Well, and I would say that we may be busier coming up and might have a little bit more energy, but to do good self-care, because Saturn might say, okay, to take better care of yourself, and now you didn't, and um, now you have to deal with the consequences. And I would say, don't overcommit, because you might feel like, oh yeah, I can do all that, and then when it comes down to it, you might not be able to. I also want to mention that through the month and continuing for several more months, Mars is opposite Pluto. It's, separating a little bit, but it's still within range. And then the outer planets, Uranus is trine to Pluto, and they're sextile to Neptune. So a mini grand trine or a talent trine, and that's going to be in effect for quite some time. So it's an ongoing theme that keeps repeating throughout all this energy. And I think of those outer planets are all changing signs. Pluto just did, and Uranus and Neptune will be next year changing signs. So it feels like a big paradigm shift coming up, but they're doing it one at a time. But for them all to be doing it so close together, that's huge to me. Anything
Oh,
else
I
you'd like to
agree.
share about this chart?
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with your assessment without a doubt. That definitely big, well, they're all shifting signs, but then they all retrograde back. I mean,
Hmm.
Pluto's already done it, but Neptune goes into Aries, and then Saturn goes into Aries, and Uranus goes into Gemini, and then all three of those retrograde back. And so there is some shifts, but there's a they're stuck in the lobby for quite a while, before they
Yes.
really get called into the main office to do their business.
Well, they kinda open the door and do a little test and go, "Okay, I don't know if I wanna do that, I'm gonna go back, and I'll come back
Exactly.
later." Okay,
Exactly.
and then the court card for Sagittarius is the Knight of Wands, and it covers the last decan of Scorpio and the first 2 decans of Sagittarius. Would you like to say anything about this card?
Yeah, I love the Knight of Wands, and I always think it's a really good card. It embodies that Sagittarian energy. The rearing horse, a lot of people see it maybe as maybe a little more aggressive or something, but I don't see it that way. Sagittarius is the thighs, and so when an animal crouches or rears back, it is concentrating its energy in the thighs, and and with a horse it can really then stretch out and take that and take that bounding leap as it moves forward. And so and I think that's the fire quality here is that preparation and movement, strong leaps forward that we can see on a horse. And there's a lot of mist in this card, which but the flame kind of clears mist, and heat will clear that. And so I think that this is I just always have really liked any illustration of the Knight of Wands for Sagittarius, but this one is really has a lot of that kind of it's a little bit maybe intense. Um I think there's a lot of freedom to Sagittarius, and some of the cloudiness maybe belies that a little bit. But the fact that they're holding that flaming brand, I think, shows how this character can clear the cloudiness, clear the mist, and move forward.
Yes, prepared to move forward and excited probably too. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
okay, and I have a quote: "If I have the belief that I can do it, I shall surely acquire the capacity to do it, even if I might not have it at the beginning." And that's by Gandhi. And um, I want to thank Joy for being here with me today. And I want to thank all of our audience that's here live and those that'll be coming back and watching it. And we have more episodes of the Astrology Star Sisters coming up. So always come back and join us. And the monthly podcasts that I do 3 with Justin Crockett, the astrology forecast for each month, and the full moon forecast each month, and the Chiron asteroid series. And then the Astrology Star Sisters, we have a dwarf planet series, planet stationing, the decans, and the fixed stars. And I will be on Talk Cosmos on December 1st at 1 p.m., and you can catch that here on my channel. And Joy and I both do consultations. We both have newsletters that you can sign up for and YouTube channels, and we always appreciate people subscribing. And here, Joy, you can talk about what's coming up for you.
Yeah, I've got a workshop coming up in December. It's split over 2 days, and it's about finding, and we use astrology. We start with the astrology chart. It's about finding the block that holds you back typically in your life, and using tarot and spiritual practices along with the insight from astrology to work through that and find your way past that block. It's called Heart of the Dark Woods. It's tarot astrology and spiritual practices, and that's coming up in December. And that QR code will take you there, or you can just visit joyvernon.com and click on my classes page.
Well, that's great. Sounds like a good class. And
Oh, it's
again, to get a
awesome.
hold of Joy, it's her website's joyvernon.com, and my website is alightpath.com. And do you have any last thoughts or anything you'd like to leave people with, or?
No, I just it's like Sagittarius, yay! Just get involved in the energy. It's appropriate that this is all of our preparation for most of the holidays is all during Sagittarius. It's a lot of excitement and hustle and bustle, and it's just it's a nice energy to be part of.
Thank you. Well, thank you everybody for being here today, and we look forward to seeing you soon, and have a good day.